You know, it wasn't that long ago that President Donald Trump was being railed continuously on his treatment of the border, especially the children at the border. You had a lot of leftists and Democrats at the time effectively saying that he was running one of the biggest humanitarian crises since the one that we saw in World War II. In fact, you had Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez come out and say it during a Facebook Live that he was effectively running concentration camps at our southern border. She made a big deal of it, started using phrases that they used back then or to describe what happened back then. She said it during a Facebook Live event where she effectively just called Trump, equated him to a Nazi.
The United States is running concentration camps on our southern border. And that is exactly what they are. They are concentration camps. And if that doesn't bother you, we can have, okay, whatever. I want to talk to the people that are concerned enough with humanity to say that we should not, that never again means something.
Okay, so she's never again using that phrase. It's what they use to when they talk about never allowing something like what happened in the Nazi concentration camps to ever happen again. She compared that to the crisis at the border. Now, at the border, we were keeping children in facilities. We were separating them from the adults that they were with. And you'll notice that I didn't say not separating them from their parents, because oftentimes they weren't with their parents. They were with what are called coyotes, and their coyotes are effectively paid to transport children from Mexico into the United States. Now, the fact is that the coyotes weren't always clean. Oftentimes you would see them children being sold into sex slavery in the United States, being sold into servitude of gangs. These children were always in danger. And we separated them from their parents to make sure that these parents were on the up and up. They were actually their parents. They were actually their guardians. And if they weren't, then they were sent back, which is good because you would want to prevent that from happening. You would want to prevent the child from being sold into some sort of slavery, being recruited into a gang. But despite all of this, despite the logistics of it all, the left had continued to say stuff like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is saying. It was a huge crisis. It was massive. You remember that Time even created a cover for one of their magazines where Trump was looking indifferently down at this crying Hispanic girl. And it was a very ridiculous time. Everyone was trying to paint Trump as this uncaring racist who was overseeing this and not doing well with a crisis at the border. That is all not true, by the way. Trump really did help the border. You'll recall that he started creating the wall. He cracked down a lot, and we had fewer crossings than we had ever had before. Now, let's fast forward to today. And talking to the Democrats, especially Jen Psaki, Biden's press secretary, there is no crisis at the border. She, at one point in time, slipped up and actually said that it was a border crisis, but then once called out by a reporter, she walked it right back and said, oh, there's no crisis. We're fine. Everything's fine. Nothing's fine. Nothing at all is fine. That's the issue. And you'll notice also, weirdly enough, while they were calling for transparency at the border, back during Trump's era, you had Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and her famous photo shoot where she was screaming at border guards as they were leading children into these facilities. She was stuck behind a fence, couldn't do anything about it. Of course, she was screaming at an empty parking lot. It was all just a big photo op. It was really embarrassing for her. Now Psaki is not allowing any access to these border facilities. From Fox News, this is 4 days ago. Psaki stonewalls on press access to border facilities. White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki did not have a timeline for when the public would be able to see the conditions inside border facilities, despite repeated questioning in her Wednesday briefing. One reporter noted that it's been 3 weeks since Psaki was first asked about access for journalists inside the facilities. We are still not seeing any images inside the facilities, asked the reporter. The DHS oversees the Border Patrol facilities, and we want to work with them to ensure we can do respecting the privacy and obviously the health protocols required by COVID. The reporter noted that the administration has not released photos either Again, we remain committed to sharing with you all the data on the number of kids crossing the border, said Psaki. The steps we're taking, the work we're doing to open up facilities, our own bar we're setting for ourselves, improving and expediting the timeline and the treatment of these children. And she continued, and we remain committed to transparency. I don't have an update for you on the timeline access, but it's certainly something we support. That's great. Now, let's just go to yesterday. The DHS secretary was called out by Chris Wallace on Fox News Sunday about the media blackout on the border crisis. Let's listen in just real fast.
The Vice President Harris and I and our entire administration will always be honest and transparent with you about both the good news and the bad.
So why has the Biden administration refused to allow reporters to see for themselves and to record what the conditions are under which these minors are being housed? Why, in fact, did you, when you went to the border on Friday and led a congressional delegation, why did you refuse to allow reporters to see the conditions under which these minors are being held?
Two things, Chris, if I may. Number one, let's not forget that we're in the midst of a pandemic, and we are focused on our operations, executing our operations in a crowded Border Patrol facility where hundreds of vulnerable migrant children are located, number one. And number two, we're working on providing footage so that the American public can see the Border Patrol stations. And I would encourage you and other reporters to see the facilities under the control of the Health and Human Services Department, where those children are sheltered and where they belong and where we are moving them as quickly as possible.
Okay, so you'll notice that they use the COVID excuse, and they're still saying, well, we're going to give you, we want you to see the footage, we want you to see the photos. No photos released whatsoever. Until now. And it wasn't the DHS that released them. It was someone inside, a leak, photos that were leaked to the public, and it's covered by Axios. Released them today, 5 hours ago. Scoop, inside a crowded Border Patrol tent in Donna, Texas. Now, Donna, Texas had this huge facility built, a migrant facility built, and you'll notice that there are a lot of people kept in cages, only they're not cages now. They're plastic tarps. Now, you'll see from these images right here, still a lot of people inside little crowded facilities, a lot of younger people. You'll notice that they have the same blankets that they usually have. It's these kind of foil blankets on mattresses. Only this time, they're not surrounded by metal cages. They're not surrounded by fencing. Now it's plastic tarps. And you'll notice that it's also more crowded than ever. This is the crisis that they're not wanting to talk about. This is the crisis that Jen Psaki claims does not exist. These are the photos that they wanted you to see but never released until they were leaked. You'll see that this is insanely crowded. Look at all these children here, kept inside these little rooms that are no longer metal cages. Now they're just soft, friendly plastic, I guess. All have bedding that are just, it's wherever they can put it. Super crowded. All of this. Look at this. These images and these photos just showing you what exactly is happening right now at the border. Ever since Joe Biden took office, you notice that there are a lot of migrants wanting to come in. They will come here illegally if they have to. They believe that Joe Biden and the Democrats are going to treat them a lot better than Republicans will, that they can come in here and just immediately obtain citizenship. If not citizenship, then just be allowed into the country. And the thing is they're not wrong. Joe Biden and the Democrats have made it a very solid point over the course of years that they don't really consider it a crime to cross the border illegally. At one point in time, you had Nancy Pelosi herself calling illegal immigrants her constituents. This is nothing new. James O'Keefe was also at the border, and he wanted to get a good look at what's going on. You'll notice that they also obtained their own photos, and they were told to leave because it was private property. Well, James O'Keefe had a solution to get around that.
Has obtained never-before-seen photographs of what it actually looks like inside this facility. Shocking images showing people wrapped up in what looks like metal foil, laying on the ground, their faces covered. Why won't the administration be honest about this? Why won't they show you these images? I'm on the ground in Donna, Texas. If you want to take a look at this facility right here, just a month ago, Customs and Border Patrol agents completed the construction of that facility. It's a 165,000 square foot facility, and we have never seen images inside this facility before. They won't even allow the non-profit lawyers who conduct the actual oversight of these immigration detention centers to go inside. We have a man who's telling us to leave. Where would the press?
Oh man, you gotta get off. It's private property.
They told us it's private property, but you know what isn't private property? Airspace. We're gonna fly this Cirrus right over the top of the detention center to get a better look. There's the facility right there. You can see it. There it is. Flying over the facility to give you a good view.
So as you can see, this is the facility over Donna, Texas. This is a big facility, and it is packed to the brim with illegal immigrants, children. And this is the crisis that Jen Psaki refuses to acknowledge. It's not just her who refuses to acknowledge it either. Apparently, the very Democrats who at one point in time were trying to make it seem like Trump was one of the worst offenders in human history when it came to human rights, now don't seem to have anything to say. AOC has only tweeted about child migrant detention twice under Biden. We have yet to hear from Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez about these facilities as of this taping of this video, but I can guarantee you it's not going to be half as bad as it was under Trump. What does this tell us? It tells us that the Democrats don't really seem to get it when it comes to policies on migrants and illegal border crossings. They don't seem to get that whenever they speak of ceasing border restrictions, that more people are going to flood across. They don't seem to get that this is going to be harmful to the very people that they have to, by law, restrict from coming in, separate due to policy, the children from their parents in order to make sure that the parents are on the up and up. They are overcrowding these facilities because they have effectively told people that it's safe to come here by their policies, by their wording over the past few years. Now, Joe Biden right now is saying, don't come yet, don't come yet. That's what he keeps telling these migrants. And yet they're going to come anyway because they know that if they do and they cross the border and they're not caught, they're not going to be punished. He is creating a crisis. Not creating a crisis. There is a crisis. It's a massive crisis at the border that he refuses to acknowledge, that Jen Psaki refuses to acknowledge, that the entire Democratic establishment refuses to acknowledge. They're not going to come down on Joe Biden. It's not going to be considered a concentration camp like it was under Trump. Despite the fact that even more kids than ever are going to be kept in these facilities cramped together, they're not going to acknowledge this as some sort of crisis or a humanitarian event where everyone is mistreated and things are at their worst. It's not going to happen. The Democrats do not care. They do not care about what happens at the border so long as it helps them stay in power, so long as it makes them look good. Okay, they will refuse that to admit that there is a crisis, but they do want to be seen as the good guys here. They want to be seen as the humanitarians, as the people who care. Now, I want you to look at these photos. Does this look like care to you? It sure doesn't to me. I'll see you in the next video. Hey, thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it or learned anything, please hit that like button and be sure to subscribe and hit that bell notification icon so you're made aware when we upload new content. See you in the next video.